My name is Jason Carlatini, and I have the privilege to be here today with Mr. Kim, Dr. Beach, and Amy Friend with Hill Country Hope for Mental Health, and having a conversation here with Mr. Kim about what our students, what our families are all dealing with in their current COVID-related season and all the challenges and changes with that. So we're blessed. I mentioned we have Mr. Kim here with us, who's the Superintendent of Comal ISD, and we're so thankful for you to take the time with us. He's also a father of three, one graduate and two that are still in the Comal ISD system here. We also have Dr. Beach, who's with us, who's a psychologist here in the Bulverde Spring Branch community. He's a father of two Comal ISD students, one high school, one middle school, right? And then Miss Amy Friend over here, who has been a board member in Comal ISD, also has 4 kiddos who have gone through the system, and then is a graduate student in counseling and is about to be in the early 2021 a licensed professional counselor associate. So we're excited about that for her. She's wrapping that up. And I'm Jason Carlatini. I'm currently a licensed professional counselor intern and community pastor at Riverside. I have 3 kiddos in the Comal ISD school system, 1 elementary, 2 high schoolers. And so we're coming to you to share with you, have a little conversation that we hope will help you. Hill Country Hope for Mental Health is an organization that exists to bring about awareness and resources for our community in Western Comal County and dealing with mental health and mental wellness. And so we're excited to be here and talk to you today, Mr. Kim, about just what families are experiencing. And so I'd love to just jump in with you. Since March 2020, it's been a very unusual season for us these last few months. Would you share a little bit of what you have seen, what the district has seen that students and families are going through, experiencing right now, especially from kind of that mental health perspective?
Yeah, well, thanks for the invite, first of all. Appreciate you guys being part of that, and good to see both of you guys as well, too. It feels like we haven't seen each other in a while. I will tell you that, since March, and how ironic is it that we're in the year 2020? And, if you think about them from a medical perspective, you're supposed to have more clear vision. But I think it's gotten fogged up quite a bit. I think that, since March, this pandemic that we're all facing with has really been revealing in many ways for a lot of families and all of us as well. As professionals, just as much about our livelihoods, our work, our securities, insecurities, and our infrastructure. And I think it has questioned a lot in terms of what type of the world we're living in many ways. I think that schools have always been a source of routine, structure for kids, and when that has been sort of taken away, at least in some sort of mindset, if nothing else, I think that has created a lot of anxieties, a lot of frustrations, and a lot of just revealed a lot of thoughts that we took it all for granted in many ways. And I think that's I think in many ways we just didn't know how emotional we would be about this. Something that we've always known to be there as a ubiquitous thing, like air. Like breathing air, that we've always had it, but when there's a thought about that, it's going to be sort of taken away from you or not be available. I think that creates a sense of questioning, a lot of thoughts. Sure. But also then there's also questions about how we can make it better, how we could see this in a different way. So there's been a lot of that as well too. And we also don't want to forget how our teachers and our staff members are feeling about this just as much, because a lot of them are torn because they're also parents of their own, but they're also professionals, having now to work with, once again, their students. And how do you traverse that with this concern about health and self-care that's out there quite a bit? And so all these things have created and really kicked up a sandstorm of, I think, just a lot of emotional questions about where we are, where we stand today, and our own belief system in many ways. And so very difficult, I think, in many ways for any one person to solve, for sure. And so, but we've seen a range of questions, range of emotions, range of concerns. I think you will be. I think you will be somewhat, for me, to put it into some buckets of categories because they're so uniquely individual, uniquely in its own self, very significant. That we don't want to minimize that by saying, oh, it's this versus that versus that. So we've been very thoughtful to just look at the whole picture and really try to figure out what really is the best thing that we ought to do for the majority of the whole as a school district. So that's been our approach. That's been my approach, trying to figure that out. And of course, with 25,000 students, it's hard to accommodate everybody's needs and wants. It's never that we always accommodated everybody's needs and wants in the past, but now it's even more magnified, and there's amplification of the issue to such a degree that and I think in many ways, and I'm going to go on a little limb here to say this, and I can't believe I am because I'm being recorded. There's almost a level of people's need for someone to justify their thoughts. And so in some sense, the school district justifying that your belief about what's going on is the right versus that is right. And I think this notion of who's right is probably, in my opinion, maybe not productive. Because there's no right or wrong. I think we just all have to understand that we're all in this together. And I think that, unfortunately, is just being perceived as a lip service when we really are trying to figure out each individual situation to the degree that we can as a school system. And I think perhaps we're not doing a good job of that. Perhaps we're failing in some sense. A lot of it is just the fact that there is a level of overwhelmingness on this issue, of course, because this is a situation that's affecting everybody. I will just tell you, relatively speaking, when you do an attendance zone boundary change, that affects a certain smaller segment of the population, of a neighborhood.
Sure.
But eventually, when a decision is made, people can move forward and move on. But this affects everybody, this pandemic that we're fighting. And there's no really a timeline that we're seeing right now. This is definitive to say it's going to end on this and such this. Mm-hmm. So I think that also is causing a lot of anxieties and frustrations.
And as a former board member, what I can just say is that having, prior to COVID, prior to the things that we've experienced now, I have had the privilege of sitting in with a principal on the elementary campus knowing that every principal on every campus in Comal ISD knows every name of every kid on their campus. And they literally go through and consider the needs and how those needs are being met. That was prior to COVID, so I know that continues to happen. I know that's one of the ways that our district deals, and it really does matter. Every single kid really does matter. So that's been a practice that I was really humbled by watching each principal, knowing that they have every kid's name, every kid's represented, and that they're doing the best they can to meet the needs of every kid on every campus.
Yeah, that's good. You were talking about everyone's kind of in this together, and I think kind of the best, this old analogy we use, that we're all in the same boat. The best analogy I've found to describe this is one, and it went across social media, it's not mine, but it's the idea that we're all in different boats in the same sea. That it's so important to understand that we're not alone in this, that everyone's being challenged by it. Whether you're an administrator or a superintendent or a teacher or a parent or a kid in the district. Yeah. However, we need to really recognize that experience is going to be very different for a family whose kid might have severe anxiety, about being ill or about going to school or about staying at home and trying to learn online. It's going to be very different for a family that has tons of resources and accesses compared to a family that doesn't have many at all, even technology access or things like that. And so I think that may be a way for us to really accept and acknowledge that that you are not alone, and yet it is different for each of us. And so we need to really try to think about, if this is what it's like for me, but not say this is how it is for everybody. If you are in that boat, it might be a very different experience. And so really trying to understand that and give each other, kind of grace and patience during this time is so important. Yeah.
That's good.
I do, I believe that, I think all of us do. I mean, I subscribe to the notion from that movie, Kung Fu Panda, where it talks about nothing is by accident, right?
Yeah.
Everything, there's a reason why this is all happening in some sense. And if I remove myself and look at that from a big picture, I certainly think that our circumstances are giving us an opportunity to really face up to our desire to be more gracious, to be more kind, and not use those things as a lip service or an Instagram post here and there that we normally would do when things are okay, when things are there's no pandemic, when livelihood is okay. And I think this is when I think those things ought to be probably more significant. And I do think that there's a great opportunity. And I do believe that people are doing that, but there's certainly families and students who are struggling through, and just because of the unknown. The unknowns are really tough, I think, in many ways, not knowing what could happen. Yeah.
When you mentioned about it's not about which side's right or any of those kind of things, I thought about how in any relationship, friendship, marriage, anything like that, if emotions stress starts getting higher, we stop giving each other the benefit of the doubt a lot of times. And so I've been on social media once or twice in the last 6 months, and I think that's one of the things that I've noticed is, like you said, it's am I right? Who's right? As opposed to how do we move forward together the best that we can? Are we doing the best we can? And that's always subjective, right? I mean, so that's room for discussion, but I think that can help a lot in these kind of situations with this heightened emotions, heightened tension that you and the district and teachers and administrators are all experiencing, as well as us as families as well. So
yeah, I think the everything is so sensitive to the degree that I think that and there's also a very easiness about how we can express our concerns to the point that without maybe some thought about understanding the whole information. And I think that it comes off then as a result of sort of blame or criticism. Maybe that was really the unintended issues. It's interesting how when you talk about social media, I don't subscribe to it because I know. But whenever I do speak with someone who made a comment or here and there, individually, face to face, is a whole different interaction. Sure. But I think somehow or another we've given ourselves some permission to say something that we ought to maybe find out more, to talk more about it. So I don't know how we've given ourselves that permission to do that, but maybe it's okay to do that. But I think sometimes that gets into the overwhelming situation. I think, as I've mentioned to you guys before, it's that old wise Native American tale about which wolf do you want to feed. And I think, unfortunately, in some cases, we're feeding the wrong wolf than the good wolf, if you will. So I think that has I think overall contextually given some context to the situation in some sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, and we know that as Dr. Beach mentioned, that it's like moving a ship, and you guys are like moving a ginormous cruise ship as far as moving a school district of our size and making adjustments. And we know that mental health, mental wellness is what I like to say, because it's not always just about a diagnosable thing. Even before COVID hit, we're doing things, taking steps, initiatives to help with that. But you're also a school, and your primary focus is education, and also that's a little, difficult at times. And then you have COVID on top of that. Can you share some of the things that the school district is taking steps in or working on to help families, help students that are dealing with mental wellness issues just on a normal day-to-day basis?
So that's a huge question, first of all.
Oh,
but I don't know if we have 3 days for this podcast. I don't know, 3-day length podcast.
We can go as long as you want, Mr. Kim.
Yeah, I think that one, we recognize that overall, if we don't provide a safe environment, then our kids, our students, and our teachers even won't be able to interact in such a way to be even to talk about some of the issues that we're talking about from the mental health or social emotional side of things. So when this pandemic hit in March, I was in spring break, and I remember working through that issue to make sure that we were thoughtful about how do we first create a safe environment. And safety about this notion of health is what we really talked about. So we really talked about needing supplies, PPE equipment, different things. Just all the things related to creating a safe environment. Because we knew that was going to be part of the discussion at some point. And then creating a sort of chain of communication where people were able to express their concerns and so on. And part of that has been to really be thoughtful about how we connect to certain segments of student population that we know are struggling through, that we already were case managing in many ways. And then really also making sure that we were able to get them to connect with us. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure we've done a great job on that. Just looking back in the last few weeks, we know the numbers of kids that we are interacting with. In some sense, I think having school opened up has helped to re-engage some of our students back into that understanding and that discussion, to be quite honest. Prior to that, especially the last 9 weeks of last school year, when we were all basically shut down, essentially, it was really quiet. We didn't have a lot of engagement. Now, that's also due to the fact that we were also worrying about our professionals, our teachers, our counselors, who are having to go through their own livelihood, their own situations at home. So that in itself with the students, it was really hard to connect. And I think, if nothing else, a school is a place where that does occur, can occur. And so I think in some sense we've advanced that. And right now we're coordinating with we've actually converted some of our positions into our campus specialists. These are we were calling them sort of school sort of parent liaisons or parent stuff, but we've actually converted them. We've actually hired some qualified individuals into these positions. We have them mainly at our high schools and some of our middle schools. And then we're actually now using all of our CIS, or Communities in School, which is a local organization throughout our state of Texas. They're actually now moved down to the elementary level. So we made some adjustments structurally to address some of the issues, because what we see is that a lot of our middle schoolers, especially high schoolers, are more apt to bring this forward. They're at the developmental age where they're able to talk about these, express these concerns. So we've actually had more of an in-person person at the campus at all times working on these issues. Certainly we could use more in these positions. Certainly we've been coordinating with counselors, administrators, of course, and then teachers as well too. So we've been very thoughtful about separating out attendance, grades, and what we're calling engagement. So when we see kids less than engageful, whether because they're not logging in, if they're remote students, or they're not conversing with us, we're actually engaging with them, calling them out, making home visits, talking with them, and so on. So I think that those have been the sort of tactical things that we've been doing as a school district. But in terms of multiple different issues, it's a variety of things. The things that we used to deal with prior to COVID, but now on top of that, additional anxieties about health, and about just family issues, and about more loss of jobs in the families. And it just has really amplified even more than in the past.
And this is for any of you, following up with that, it's great to hear some of the things that are going on. I know, again, it's turning a huge cruise ship. It can't just, not a speedboat, you can just turn real sharply on some of those things. What's something that you might share with a student who might be watching this, family, parents that might be watching this and say, hey, I'm one of those people that my anxiety, my stress level is higher than maybe it's ever been. I'm struggling in some way. What's something that you might share with them, whether it's a resource or a tool or just a word of encouragement?
Yeah. You know, one of the things that we really pride ourselves, and we still do, is a sense of belongingness to our school district, a belongingness to each other. In fact, one of the things that we survey every year of our students, and we're still going to be doing that this year, is that if a child feels like they have at least one student or a friend that they feel like they can talk with, it's a way for us to gauge whether or not there's a sense of belongingness.
Mhm.
And we're really seeing that when students were really shut down, especially the last 9 weeks of school. And I have a larger student advisory group that I remotely talk with over the summer months. And these are typically very free-flowing, very engageful, very joking with me about various things. But I'll tell you what, it was extremely dead silent. And you can see a sense of what I would call, just from an observation eye, what I would label as somewhat of a depressed attitudes among the kids. They were almost not engageful, you know. And I think now having met with them again since school started, now they're somewhat busy. They got homework, they got to keep up with their friends, teacher, this thing. So it's almost like there's been a stark improvement of sort of this optics or visual observation of the kids' attitudes, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I think in some sense it's gotten better, but I will tell you that if no other situation, if a child can really reach out to another friend, and we've been very fortunate in our school district where many of students have revealed to adults, counselors and teachers, that their friend is struggling. Someone is struggling, because I think at some point some of those students are really shy or thoughtful about not coming to an adult. Maybe there is not a match. There's not a sponsorship, and I think there's maybe a detachment or no one that they can feel like they can go to.
They don't have that connection.
They don't have that
with
connection yet,
someone
and I
like
think
that.
that's why the relationship is consistently had to be involved, right? We have to constantly delve into and really promoting this relationship, and if we don't, there's a disconnect. That, you know, there probably is a reluctancy of a child to come forward to an adult to say, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something," because it's so vulnerable, it's so revealing, it's so, in some sense, maybe guilt-ridden or shameful in many ways in terms of their thoughts, right? And they don't understand that. And certainly, in some sense, some of us adults is not really prepared to do that either, because we're going through our own issues.
Sure.
So I think that issue is a terrible situation. But I would say, to your question, if someone is listening to this, to really just talk with somebody, to reach out to a teacher, any teacher that they feel have a connection to. That's why I think it's so hard to have some one person do this by themselves as a staff psychologist or staff counselor on this, because they truly do not get to know everybody. All of us as adults, all of us as friends, we're going to have to really just be mindful of hearing, listening to these things, and being able to then really raise it to another concern to someone. And even to me, and we certainly will try to go ahead and find the right path of some solution for the child. We've had that over the summer months in recent issues here recently, and I'm so appreciative that many of our students feel connected enough to be able to say something on behalf of another student. And what I'm also seeing quite a bit is that many of our students who are struggling are revealing themselves and their issues on social media. And oftentimes that's through the Snap thing, the other things that adults are not engaged with.
Sure.
And so we're all using different developmentally appropriate platforms on social media.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, there's even more of a disconnect.
Are you saying all students aren't on Facebook? Is
They're
that
not.
Oh,
Shocker.
So, yeah.
They're not on that. And actually, the students they're not using Twitter either.
Yeah.
And so they're using these other things that are close-knit environment, and only truly their friends are seeing it. And so I think that's causing some level of alarm to me, that some of our, in recent cases that I personally been dealing with in our school district, the last ones to know are the parents. The last ones to know there's an issue is when we make the home visit or when we make the phone call, whether it's the middle of the night, is when we reveal to the parent that, hey, such and such is going on with their child.
Yeah.
And their usual response has been, I did not know that. I wasn't aware of it. And not that they're, because they're bad mom and dad or they're disengageful. It's just that it's so hidden.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I would say, Jason, your question is if someone's struggling, what I would tell you is that it really is important to talk to somebody. It's really important to talk to somebody that you trust. And it isn't the same talking to someone online as talking to someone in person. I mean, whether that's reaching out to a school counselor or a teacher or even a friend in person. But there is a lot of shame and it takes a lot of vulnerability and courage. But what Dr. Beach said earlier, it's like picture that idea of we're all in boats, but we're all on the same body of water. And so we all feel some degree and some level of something. But that is where we've got to feel connected to something beyond ourselves. Because otherwise we feel hopeless. We feel like I'm all alone, nobody else is going through this. And that's actually not true. We're all experiencing varying degrees of that. So I just want to normalize that we all feel fear. Anxiety is a normal part of life. How we navigate that is what's important. So it's important for you to know you're not alone and that there are people that care. But you have to take that vulnerable risk and not feel shame about that because we all feel that. And so just normalizing that. And I want to give Tuck a chance to respond.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that's right, that when we kind of tell someone else that we're struggling with something, it reduces its power over us.
Absolutely.
When we keep it hidden, we keep it secret, it has a lot of power over us. And so I agree with the idea of really reaching out, trying to understand that there's probably someone else struggling. If not, it's important that I let someone know that I'm struggling. That's hard. It takes having courage to face that fear to reach out, but understanding that it will reduce its power over us. And then I would say, in addition to kind of finding one friend maybe that you could tell, to also I think as parents and teachers to kind of help our kids know to look out for people that are in a different boat, in the same ocean, on the same sea. That we know that if someone does share things, that you need to get them help, that you need to tell, at that point, an adult that could help, right? Because it's very true that sometimes kids, and it's developmentally appropriate, that you reach out more to your friends. Your friends became kind of the person that you look to for influence more as you get into your teenage years, and that's really normal. However, many kids and teens are not really equipped to know, what do I do now that my friend told me they're suicidal? And so I think really trying to emphasize to our kids that if someone might be struggling, and if they are, find an adult that can. Find a counselor at school.
And for parents, too, in line with that, I would say we'll face our own shame and fear, like, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong as a parent? We've got to subdue that and be a safe place to let our kids talk about it and let them struggle and not make it about us. Subdue that, talk to our own friends, right? But not squelch what our kids are really feeling. We've got to be that safe place. So in order to be that safe place for parents, you've got to be able to go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're feeling that way. And then process kind of on your own, right, as an adult, like, I didn't know this was going on, but our kids need that safety. And for that matter, teachers too, right? We as adults tend to prop up our defenses, and it's like, put that down for just a second, and let's, and like be okay listening and process that somewhere else, but provide safety for these a little more vulnerable, right? Little developmentally, they're learning and finding their way, and just kind of subduing that and being safe for a minute.
I would just tell you, talking with some of the students, one of they're disincentivized to talk with their own parents because they feel like their mom or dad, instead of just listening and just validating the thoughts, that they're going to go ahead and use that now to bring up a whole issue. And that's not what their intent is.
And I can tell you as a parent, I'm guilty of that. I am guilty. I can only speak to this because I've done it, right? And then I come back around and go, I am so sorry. I wasn't really listening to you. I wasn't a safe place for you. What you said was really important.
Right.
And I missed it.
I got to give a big shout out to our counselors and our teachers and some of our specialists who've been working on this and administrators, because by the time an issue becomes at my level, we've always known a background story for some time now. and there's a deep, rich sharing, a sense of vulnerability that's been shared, a trust factor that's been shared where there's a relationship. And that alone has really, in many ways, protected and as well as resolved the issue. And so that in itself, so the more relationships we can carry, the more opportunities that we can do that, I think has been a rewarding thing for us. Sometimes we only see the ones that are unfortunately that makes the news. But there are countless numbers of others that are teachers and our administrators and counselors that really are working through it. And I think that's one of the hardest things about the pandemic, because that process was taken away from us just as well, to our worry and our desire. How do we do that? So I think in many ways, to be able to now get back into that rhythm again, to even as limited as we are with all the restrictions that we have to follow right now, I think it's been good.
I remember Dr. Beach and I did a Zoom with Mr. Smith at the end of last school year, and that was one of the things that he shared that I appreciated so much was his concern for specific students that he knew that school was their safe place. For a lot of kids, it's but there's also a lot of kids that is their safe place. And so I appreciate you guys sharing.
I don't know how many kids have told me that they miss school. And
yeah.
for kids to actually say that,
That's amazing. That's amazing.
But I think, I think that when an adult administrator or principal or counselor or teacher walking by a student who may be maybe shy in some observation, but just say, hey, how are you doing today? That alone really goes a long way. And I think, certainly, we all struggle. I certainly struggle. Just someone asking, how things are going in a very genuine way. Sort of to your point, once that sort of secret is revealed, the power, the sort of this awful strangleholding power goes away. I would just tell you that, just like I said, just confession. I don't know why, but I certainly have not been perfect in any ways and struggling through things. And late last night, a long person that I know is considered a friend. I haven't talked to him in about a year or so, but just texts us back with, hey, I know I haven't talked to you in a while, but let's catch up. And I know you're probably going through a lot of, I don't know why you just use the word struggle, but it touched me to know that someone maybe knew a little bit more than I thought. And so, so it almost became an outlet to know that there is maybe a light at the end of the tunnel, sort of spirit.
Someone's out there thinking of me.
That's right. So I think even for our kids, in many ways, when we see kids who are maybe by themselves, aloof, or without interaction, or even kids who do, just to be able to say, hey, you doing okay today, or how are you doing today, by a strange adult or any adult that they may know, to be able to do that, I think it goes a long way. And schools are made for that.
Yeah, schools have always really provided, in addition to the routine and structure and support, a sense of community.
Sure.
So when some of those kids are not in the school, some are at home, or we're limited in activities, we can't go out to as many restaurants as we used to and be part of the community, go to as many games or participate in some of the band events or things, we sometimes really feel isolated. We feel like we're on our own boat out there and there's no one else out there we can see.
And you gotta understand, we make a fuss about it.
To look out.
Kid has 3 unexcused absences. Even now, we know more because of all this sort of remote learning thing.
Right.
We can say, hey, you have not been in school 3 days. When we make a fuss about it, I think to some degree it's a good thing. And I think kids want to know that somebody's gonna make a fuss about me. And I think that's a good thing. Now, because we know when kids are logging on, we know how many kids are logging on between the hours of midnight to 4 in the morning. And there's consistently 370 students that are logging in during that time period on our system. So we are measuring that out to see if it's consistent.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to be looking at having some program for these students. I think it validates the fact that there's some night owls in our district. And I think that's probably just a natural norm. But at the same time, are some of these students struggling with some other stuff that we're seeing? So we're going to be doing some work in the next few weeks to kind of address some of those issues.
I know a lot of teams really shifted their schedules
Everybody
to
had-
become night owls if they weren't already. They might be inclined to be anyways.
Yeah.
But some of them really, really would stay up much of the night,
Yeah.
you know, because technically I guess they could.
Yeah.
And so it'll be really interesting to see some of those students now are in class and that's
Yeah.
shifted back. I've, you know, talked to some students about let's start early, prepare for that shift, but some didn't and are still doing that, you know, especially if they can't online. And so it's going to really have an impact and it's tricky because sometimes that can become a really negative habit for yourself, you know, but some people are more wired that way as well. So it's kind of finding out what's that middle ground of this is how I'm wired and it can be a good thing. I can really be productive during the day versus at what point is that truly accepting that your sleep's important and you're not making it a priority for your life and you really should try to shift because you can shift your circadian rhythms to a degree, but only to a degree, right?
Well, and I have one angle that I'd love to hear a little bit of y'all's perspective on too that has to do with this same conversation. With Hill Country Hope for Mental Health, we're going to be doing a series of seminars on school-related stress, and that's something we've been talking about and planning for a long time, so we'll get into some real specifics of some of this. But at least generally, I mean, we all know that during this season, there's been a lot of students, a lot of families that have experienced kind of this sense of being sidelined from their expectations, from not getting to participate in their sport. You think about the worst of those cases. Those seniors from last year that didn't get to finish their seasons or their extracurriculars, or graduation was different than they anticipate. All of those kind of things.
Prom,
And prom. All of those things are still occurring on some level. In addition, just to the basics of sideline from maybe their friendships, they're being able to connect the same way that they're used to. What would you say, or as an encouragement to students and families that are experiencing some of those things, especially maybe those, older high school families that are missing out on some of those specific things that we all look forward to and we put as kind of markers in our kids' journey?
Jason, I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I think our school district, and Amy knows this, one of the things 8 years ago we did was to make sure that we are a school district that when we looked at the actual data, kids who are involved were just more engageful, they're doing it better, their attendance is better. In fact, it's true now, even more so now. Kids who are part of a team, part of an organization, part of a choir, whatever it might be, they generally want to be connected. So our approach has been, we want all 25,000 students plus to be engaged in something.
Sure.
Regardless it's an academic program, an extracurricular program, fine arts program, athletic program. And I think that creates a level of desire to be part of the community, a sense of belongingness to a tribe of sorts, to be a group. And right now, especially those students who are not even part of that, who are, let's say, at home, learning, I think there could be a huge level of isolation, of feelings of isolation in that regard. And how do you go about connecting to that? I don't know what the answers are. I just hope that there is some sense of networking that is being done. I prefer, to be quite honest with you, the physical networking, to be able to see someone, to interact to some regard, but to do this virtually in a digital environment, online environment, has been a very taxing situation there. And we are worrying about that as our teachers. In fact, when we surveyed our teachers right before the beginning of the school year, what I appreciated about the Comal Independent School teachers is that, number one, they worried about their health concerns and about what we have to support them. But the third thing they were concerned about is the engagement of the remote students, kids who are online learning. That told me a lot about our teachers and our administrators' hearts about our kids. Because we know intuitively that kids who are probably sitting at home, who are engaging their learning, are in some sense may not have all the, sort of the social things that comes with just being in a building with friends, walking the hallways together, saying hello to somebody, and things of that nature. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, but just the opportunity for that to occur in a very positive way, not being there, I think it's been a very struggle. I'll be honest with you, my advice is just is really to watch the children and really watch their kid at home and see if they're showing any signs of just being way too isolating themselves. I think I know this sounds so simplistic in such a way that it may be maybe not the right thing to say, but just taking a walk with their child outside in the sunlight, just taking a nice walk, just talking with them and just listening to their thoughts. Maybe having at least once a week, or if not twice a week, family dinners, just expressing their concerns and thoughts. I know that sounds so simplistic that maybe there would be criticism about what I just said.
Oh, I think
It
those
just
are great.
seems like,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't think
great.
there'll be criticism.
Yeah.
I think it's necessary. I think
Yeah.
we are made for that. We are
Yeah.
created to experience that and to breathe oxygen outside and,
Yeah.
and to see things. And Dr. Beach and a friend from Hill Country Hope for Mental Health did something recently on that, on the importance of being outside. I think it's critical to our mental wellness.
yes,
We've got to interact
Right.
in Zoom or whatever you're using, Google.
neat.
It's actually a lot more exhausting
It
for our
is.
mind and our brain. So I'm
We're
sure
exhausted.
you've experienced that as, if you were normally seeing 7 clients, it's after 5, you're tired because all I can take in of you is shoulder, head, whatnot. And so I'm not getting to watch and experience, so we weren't made for that. So it's a great substitute in the context of a pandemic, in the context of being
It's a good
safe.
tool.
Right.
It is a tool, but it's better than the alternative. I
Better
mean,
than nothing.
we're fortunate, I think, that we live in this age that we're still able to have some degree of connection, but
Yeah.
it's not what we were made for, in my
Right,
opinion.
Right.
We
Yeah.
need to be outside. We need to appreciate beauty and nature, and those things are really important to our mental health.
If 80% of communication is nonverbal,
That's right.
then we are really losing a lot. We are having a visual sometimes if it's a video meeting, but we're missing a lot. We're missing the vitamin D of being outside during lunch, or during recess after lunch, or things like that, or sport activities outside. We're getting less of it, and so it's so key. And so I think just the main thing that I would try to offer people is just starting with empathy, understanding that if you just provide a little bit of let me listen, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and just try to understand that it was hard for them to miss out on things, and really try to put yourselves in their shoes, back in their boat, not assume their boat's your boat, right? But it's different than seeing what that is, and just starting there, because when that does, it lowers our attack mentality, it lowers our aggression, and we feel connected to someone. That's what we're all craving, right? We are wired for connection. So if we're getting less of that lately, we have to really be sensitive to that and be aware of that and look for opportunities to connect in new ways, to get outside in new ways. There's a lot of research that demonstrates that. And to understand that we can all handle a stressor here or there. But research shows it's a pileup that hurts all of us, that affects all of us. It's sometimes too much for us. So recognizing we're all experiencing a pileup, right? What is their pileup? And so I think just for parents to understand that their kid is experiencing these things and try to check in with them and empathize first. To understand that the teachers that are teaching them are going through so many changes and struggling with, I want to reach out to that kid that's online, but it's hard to because the technology failed yesterday, or I can't quite get to them, and then being understanding of that and how hard administrators really want to try to make that better and learn. But they're all learning.
Well, and related to sidelining, something that comes to my mind is there's a Christian psychiatrist that I follow, Kurt Thompson, but he talks about, we cultivate gratitude. We know how important that is to do, but he says also journal about your lament. And so when I think about the kids that are losing something right now who didn't get to I have a daughter that graduated from A&M, and it's like, we've got to lament that you didn't get to do that the way that we thought that would look. And so let's lament that, and now let's find a way to celebrate that. So those two things live together, right? Those things that we have with, especially living in a pandemic. And I think creating that safe space again, right? Of like, let's lament that. That's really hard. Okay, now what do we have to be grateful for? What do we have to look forward to? And maybe doing that on those walks, right? Doing some of that, just organically letting that I think, be a natural part of this season that we're all in, that we're all facing.
Instead of pretending
There's a
it's
lot
not there.
Right, I was gonna say, because there
denying
is a lot of loss, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And then cultivating gratitude in context side by side with those things together, because they really do, they're really there, you know.
That's right. That's good.
I actually been walking with my youngest one, Austin. So he's been somewhat more cave-like mentality than anything else. So you know, a couple times, you know, he and I walked, and we don't really talk about a lot of, you know, we're not solving the world's issues, but I think he's kind of enjoyed that in his own way. And,
Sure.
I certainly have enjoyed it in many ways. So
Kids feel a lot less pressure
I think so.
when
Yeah.
they're doing something side by
Yes,
side with
absolutely.
you.
Right.
And if you go to their room and you say, "You're sleeping more.
Yes.
What's going on?
How
What's
are you
the
feeling?
problem?"
It seems like you're down. What's wrong?
Yeah. So
That's
instead
right.
of just
Yeah.
trying to say it, hey, let's just take a walk,
That's right.
and it's
Like
not like we
pickleball, we just picked up
yeah,
pickleball.
yeah, we really haven't said much. I mean, like I said, he's not the, you know, but it's been good in that regard. I think.
That's good.
Let's just go for a drive. Let's just go to the store. Let's
Yeah.
go fishing. Let's go do something side by side or do something together.
Yeah.
It's simple. Doesn't have to be fancy. Absolutely.
Well, the other thing I was going to add, what Amy, that you mentioned too, was I think a lot of it is perspective as well. Of, you know, we're all going to experience times where we feel sidelined, we feel like we didn't get to participate in the thing that we had an expectation or hope for. And this is just a season. It's been a rough season for sure, but it's just a season. There's going to be a day we're going to look back and go, wow, remember that 2020, that COVID? That was wild. And even be able to talk about some of the things we've learned, some of the ways we've improved, all of that. And so not make this is going to be life now forever. We're resilient as humans. We're resilient, and we'll move forward and figure things out as we go. And so that perspective, I think, helps a lot to just being able to step back. And
One of the things I think this season will provide is perhaps one level of a decrease of the stigma
yeah,
against mental health problems and issues. You know, Dak Prescott just shared,
Yeah.
you know, Cowboys quarterback, that he had experienced depression and anxiety during COVID-19, right? Certainly Michael Phelps has been a champion of his own mental health challenges and problems and wanting people to talk about it and accept it more. And so that's certainly one of my hopes, is that we can stop seeing people in different categories, as they're all mentally ill or insane, but that we're all on a continuum. And some days we are more healthy than others. And during a pandemic, as a teacher, as an administrator, as a parent, as a kid, we may not be, our best may not be what it would be before this or after this.
Yeah.
We will get through this and learn so much.
Yeah,
So
that's
having
right.
some hope that it's okay to struggle,
Mhm.
but to see beyond this, that we will learn so much from it.
that's right. Yeah, that's good. And I've been talking about more mental wellness, which is something we all have. We all need to take care of our mental well-being. And so I think those things, I love what Amy said about not ignoring that this is something that you can be sad about and disappointed that occurred the way that it did, as opposed to how you wanted it to. And just being able to talk about that and then celebrate before, it's awesome. And so I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. And one thing that did come out, as we're at Smithson Valley High School, so you can hear the bells. I was hoping we'd get one in there while we're here. But one thing that's so important, Dr. Beach, Amy, and myself, we're all mental health professionals or training in that. And I'll just tell you, it's not easy to come alongside of people that are struggling with their mental well-being. It's a difficult thing. And so if you're a student out there, if you're a parent out there that's trying to carry all of that, like we mentioned earlier, it is so, with everything else that's going on, and then you add that to the picture there, that creates a pretty overwhelming feeling, or it can. And so to find people that you can trust, that you can reach out to help you. We can't do it ourselves. In fact, in our profession, we're supposed to meet with and consult with others in our profession to help us out in that process. Mr. Kim has done that for years and years as an educational professional, and understands that just as much as, and has brought great groups, forums, you're mentioned with the students, different pockets that you get feedback from. It's important for us to stay connected and have those conversations. So please don't try to solve it all yourself, try to fix someone yourself, help them yourself, but get help however you can. And so we'll put some resources out there. Hill Country Hope for Mental Health has a website. You can just Google that, Facebook page with links to all kinds of resources in the community where you can get help as well. And we would love nothing more than for more people to feel free and not have that stigma to get some the help that they need as they go forward. So thank you, Dr. Beach, Mr. Kim, Mr. Fred. It's so great to just have this discussion with you. And one of the things I'll mention just in closing is we are going to continue to have more, whether they're digital or in person, will depend on what is going on in the world. But forums like this to discuss school-related stress. There's a lot of things that come up in the school experience for families that cause a lot of stress, and we can all learn how and help each other to deal with those better, to be better versions of ourselves as we love each other and interact with our families. And so be on the lookout for that. You'll see those coming soon. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you all for your time today. It was so fun.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks
Jason.
for the invite.
Jason.